My guest today is a registered nurse, childbirth educator, and founder of BundleBirth, a global education company training thousands of nurses in physiological birth. She's been on the podcast before, but now there's so much more going on. I can't wait to share it with you all. I'm pregnancy focused chiropractor Dr. Elliot Berlin, and you're listening to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. Sarah Lavonne, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm honored. Well, I haven't seen you in forever, which kind of sucks.
I know.
You have crazy
Sad.
energy. I can feel it coming through the Zoom over here, as always.
Always.
And you are sort of an earth mover, game changer in general. But when it comes to the world of childbirth, empowerment in childbirth, education in childbirth, you are like top of the mountain. And so you have a lot of new stuff going on since the last time we talked to you. And I want to get into all of it. But let's start at the beginning. Where are you from originally? How'd you get into this stuff?
Well, thank you for that compliment. I have been working now for 7 years. I'll get to that. And it's just so fun to be back with you and just to see where the world can take us. My life now is very different from what I ever could have possibly dreamt it to be. And my journey in birth really started. I'm living in Los Angeles right now. I've been in Los Angeles my entire adult life, and it started in birth here in LA. And so I moved here from Ecuador when I graduated high school and came to nursing school here in Los Angeles, really never thinking that I would stay. But a few years later, many years later, now I'm like very much an LA person. And I don't see myself leaving. I love Los Angeles. I love it here. I love the culture, even the birth culture and everything that I get to do because I'm in the city. So I'm currently in Los Angeles, been in Los Angeles, and that is now my home.
But your original experience with birth was in Minnesota. So how'd you end up in Ecuador?
Yeah. So my very first experience with birth was with my mother when I was 5 years old. She let me be present at my sister's birth. She had a very progressive doctor at the time. And I remember I did like little sibling classes and they talked me through the whole process. They brought me in when my sister was crowning and I was there for her birth at 5 years old. And so I blame my mom actually for my like fascination and obsession with birth because she stuck it in there at a very young age.
What is your memory of that like?
That's a great question. I remember it very clearly, actually. I remember knowing that my mom was going to be in pain and that being just like, okay, they've told me this is the way that it is and it's normal and natural. And I remember that I was with my mom's best friend outside the room and I could hear my mom making loud primal birth noises. And the friend was like, yeah, that's normal. And I was like, okay. And like, this is what you're going to see when you walk in. And sure enough, my mom did have a hospital birth. It was unmedicated, meaning no epidural, but she was, in a hospital bed on her back and all that and felt everything. And so they brought me in as they could start to see my sister's head. And I remember standing right next to her and my mom turning to me at a moment after she had pushed and was very vocal with her pushes and looked straight at me in the eye and was like, Sarah, I'm okay. And I looked at her dead-faced back and was like, I know, Mom. Like so serious, just so calm. That's always kind of how I've been with people's discomfort in labor. So I blame my mom for really setting me up with a perspective on birth that I think was really unique, especially at that time. That was in the 90s. And it was just very rare that people, especially children, were allowed in the room. Remember, we like went from like husbands not being in the room to then being in the room and then let alone a child. So I think it's even rare now.
Husbands and partners not allowed in the room to all of a sudden, not only are you in the room, but you're the coach.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I know, Mom.
What
you
has
got
happened
it.
here? Yeah. I think that's incredibly cool. I know that when I started to attend birth, I come from more of a conservative background. I come from more of a medical background and got into more of a holistic lifestyle later in life. And,
Hmm.
the idea I would be present at a birth, invited to attend a birth, and then they'd be like, oh, yeah, the toddlers are going to come down when I'm ready to push. I'm like, that's crazy. Are you sure that's okay? Do we need a psychologist? And then
Right.
every single time I've seen it happen, it's just so natural. Like the kids
Yeah.
come down and they're not afraid of it. We just think they're
Hmm.
going to be afraid of it, and they're not traumatized by it. They're educated by it, and they have
Yes.
exposure that's really important. I think that's
Hmm.
missing for most women because you get to birth now, and it's like your first time ever being around it is when you're going through it. And I don't think that's the way it was meant to be. So you went to
Totally.
Your parents went to Ecuador.
Yeah, my parents went to Ecuador when I was in sixth grade. And then I was there, went through middle school and high school in Ecuador. I went to an international school there. So there were kids from 53 different countries in my little K through 12 school, which was the most incredible experience. And actually, I've had family in Ecuador up until last August.
Oh, wow.
So for the last, goodness, like 25 years,
End of
there's
an
been someone
era.
in Ecuador. I know, I
Hmm.
know. So that's also home for me. It's my like sneaky sauce because if you saw my picture, you'd be like, I'm sorry, what? You grew up in South America? You speak Spanish? I'm like, mm-hmm.
Mm,
It's my
no.
secret that I definitely hold back because you learn a lot about people when you can fully understand them and they think you
Wow.
can't. So it's fun.
Yes, you do. I know several
Mm-hmm.
examples of this. You
Definitely.
undercover speaker of languages. Okay, so then you left Ecuador, and then when did you realize nursing is your calling?
I realized nursing was my calling, although not fully understanding what nursing was, to be honest. I knew I wanted to help people. I knew I didn't want to be behind a computer, although now, ironically, that is where I spend a lot of my
Hmm.
time. But I knew that I also really loved babies and I really loved working with women. And so it sort of naturally was like interesting. I've also always had a full on obsession with pregnant people. I think they
Mm.
are the most beautiful human beings on the planet. I still, after 5,000 births later, I still think at every single birth, like, how is that just inside? Like, this is nuts still to this day. And so that started at a very young age. But I decided, and I had like a gut feeling, to be honest, about nursing in about 10th grade. That's when I started looking at schools and was looking for specifically nursing schools and good nursing schools. I went to Azusa Pacific University here in Los Angeles, is where I ended up. They have a very, very good nursing program. It was #1 in the country, actually. When I
Ooh.
went to it, I did not have a social life. It sort of traumatized me, to be honest, because I
Oh,
don't. Now I'm like, I'll never go back to school again. But it prepared me to be a very good nurse. And I had a lot of experience. It was 4 years of clinical. I walked out with a public health nurse license on top of it. And so it was just amazing. So I knew
mission
nursing in
accomplished.
about 10th. Yeah. And then I came here and graduated
Okay, so
nursing
after
school.
graduation, what kind of jobs did you want? Did you get?
So I was throughout nursing school working at Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. So I was a like a CNA basically there, and that gave me incredible experience. And I loved peds, and I loved working with the kids, and not but and it was also not for the faint of heart, and just like grueling emotionally for me.
Hmm.
And I remember I had a 13-year-old pass away in my arms. And
Oh,
I remember holding her as I felt her body go limp and was like, this is the last time I want to do this.
oh,
And so I had a job in peds, and I love that. And if you are a peds nurse out there, or you know anybody, please give them extra love because that is like the most amazing job and also the one of the most challenging. But I also always knew I loved labor and birth. In nursing school, my labor and delivery rotation, my professor sort of, I think she knew that like I'd probably end up, I had like the personality for a labor and delivery nurse. And so she'd pull me from the postpartum shifts and put me in labor. I saw like 26 births when I was in nursing school, which is insane. You're lucky if you see one or two on the huge. And so that was just amazing. I just remember loving it and really wanting labor and delivery, having a job in peds. And then it was also in the era where nursing jobs were extremely competitive,
hmm.
extremely, to the point where I had people in my nursing cohort, which again, like one of the top schools in the country, that didn't get a job in nursing, no matter what specialty, for like a year and a half after
Wow,
they graduated. It was wild.
wow.
But I got hired directly into labor and delivery in a
Congrats.
hospital in downtown
Even though it
Los
was a
Angeles.
while back, that's a huge congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, it was amazing. And I really think like it set me up because I feel like I've been on this like expedited trajectory through my career. I've also never considered myself an ambitious person, which if you knew me now, you'd be like, I'm so confused by that. But really, I just wanted to help people. And I remember my first day of nursing and going in and crying, like bawling to my mother, who was still in Ecuador, who I had to call on like Skype and being like, I will never be able to do this. This is terrible. It's so hard. They're doing so many things at once. I will never be able to do it. And I love it.
Oh,
And it really being like, I remember saying within the first couple of months, like, I will do this the rest of my life. Like, people go through multiple careers and stuff. And like, I was like, I will never get tired of this. This is the most amazing job in the entire world. I mean, I still feel that way. My career has shifted a
changed a
good
little
amount.
bit.
Yeah,
But I
but
think
I still
that
feel that way.
even me, like it's incredible to be reconnected with your passion for what you do. But I think the audience can already feel the drive, the nuclear energy behind you that has led to what you're doing right now. We are going to take a break, but I will say a few things that you mentioned that I can relate to. Number one, birth never gets old. I never thought I'd be in the birth world ever, but 20 years later, it just never,
Yeah.
the magic of it, the
Ugh, so good.
miraculousness of it,
Yeah.
everything about it just never gets old. And number two, nurses run the world, save the world, make the world go round. I knew that from work that I've done in emergency rooms and hospitals from when I was 18 years old, working in emergency medicine, all the way up until working in pregnancy, labor, and delivery. And then when I got COVID and I was trying not to die from the alpha
Mm-hmm.
COVID, and doctors wouldn't come in the room, but the nurses were there putting their life on the line for me and for everyone else who had it. Nurses are
Mm.
insane. And then pediatric nurses in general, even in like healthy settings, are
Yes.
insane. And in hospital
Yes.
settings, I mean,
So
just the
special.
biggest angels. And, as in my emergency medicine, if someone would die in my arms and they're in their 90s, it's devastatingly sad. But when you lose a ped and they make that transition with somebody loving, nurturing, caring, it just makes all the difference. So
Mm-hmm.
those are a few things to recap. I want to know where your nuclear energy took you next, but we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Sarah Lavonne. Welcome back to our nuclear submarine, Sarah Lavonne. Okay, so nursing now, big change. So you get into labor and delivery,
Mm-hmm.
and what's that transition like for you?
It was amazing. It was very hard. And I learned a lot in my downtown hospital that I saw literally every major obstetric emergency within the first about year, which they
Mm.
say usually takes about 5. And so I was just like ushered into a whole lot of learning really quickly. And lucky for me, I do learn very quickly. I love a challenge. I love the adrenaline. I love the interpersonal. And yet that was the only vantage point on birth that I had. And again, it was like at an inner city hospital in downtown Los Angeles. I only spoke Spanish. My Spanish was better there than it ever was living in Ecuador, to be
Mm.
honest. And I learned all the OB Spanish too, which is like a whole nother language in and of itself in English,
Right,
let alone
medical
Spanish. So
Spanish.
it was really amazing. And I realized what honestly the motivation was. I looked at my student loans and was like, oh, I'm going to be broke and in these loans forever if I don't actually start doing something about it. And then I had a nursing friend or nurse friend who had started at a very different demographic hospital here in Los Angeles, out in Beverly Hills. And she was like, come and go. There's per diems available. So I technically got a second job, one, to pay off my student loans, and two, but specifically looking for an environment that would provide me with a complete opposite perspective. And often in nursing, this is true in many specialties, but I'll speak only to labor and delivery because that's all I've ever done. And that each hospital has its own culture and its own way of doing birth. And we know this as birth workers now, having gone all over, that like they have like it's a process, right? And
Hmm.
until you get out of that and you start seeing and learning from one another, whether that be in the same city or the country or even the world, now that I get to learn from these nurses all over the place, you start to realize like, wow, there's a lot the same, but there's a lot different. And so I started at this second hospital per diem, paid off my loans, loved it there too. And as I was working those two jobs, they were looking for 8 nurses to pull and help develop their childbirth education program.
And
And
Beverly Hills.
in Beverly Hills, yes. And so I was one of those 8 chosen to help develop their childbirth education program. And we did that. And then I started teaching. I started developing and teaching a bunch of their specialty classes and really started seeing what was happening in like the community prior to birth. My only exposure to pregnant people really was like, unless I was at Target or something, at the bedside when they were in labor or when they were having a medical issue that hopefully we discharge them home or take care of them throughout their pregnancy. And so my experience of seeing the process of like early pregnancy to like middle pregnancy to labor was non-existent. And so
That's
that was
so
really
interesting.
helpful for
I
me.
never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That as labor and delivery, you're labor and delivery.
Yes. And our vantage point on pregnancy, birth, sort of like even the like perinatal period is very much labor centric.
Mm.
And so it really helped sort of bring my vantage point just like one step outward to go, oh, wait, like community health and like public health stuff and like prevention, all of that. And so I realized too that like, which I knew for a while because I'd been doing it on the floor as a peer mentor, I had sort of like created jobs for myself. I'd just like see a need and fill it. And then they'd be like, you should do that the whole time. We'll give you a promotion. So I moved my way through various roles on the floor very quickly in a like short amount of time, and everything related to education, empowerment, supporting nurses. But then now I was also getting to support the community and see how specifically childbirth education completely transformed their experience. And to the end, I could tell like a family would show up in labor and I'd be like, observe them for a while, ask them a few questions. And I'd be like, you did our classes, huh? And they'd be like, yeah, we did. I'm like, I can totally tell. And it would make a difference. And so that was really exciting to me. And I was also seeing a lot of gaps and a lot of issues and a lot of concerns. And I was seeing and hearing the stats that up to 78% of people would use the word traumatic to describe their birth. And I'm thinking, ooh, wait a second, that is so unacceptable. And then I went into this whole like trauma thing with trauma-informed care and all of that. And it just really got all of those vantage points. I started working with doulas in the community, training doulas in the community, and really just hearing a lot more stories that were a lot more varied than my own only patient care as a nurse, which is very valid and helpful, but it just sort of expanded my mindset. And so I had lots of ideas. I am an idea girly. I am a problem solver. I want to help. I realize I can't save the world, but I know that I can show up with myself wherever I am and help make a difference. And so I pitched that to that hospital. At some point in there, I quit my other job and I went full-time at the Beverly Hills Hospital. So I was not doing both jobs the whole time and working like 6 days a week forever, thank goodness. But when I was there, I pitched these ideas and was like, I have some ideas and I have some thoughts. I had just done a presentation for CMQCC, which is a multidisciplinary collaborative in California that sort of sets some standards, pools the research, and says, here's how we're better as a medical world. And so that had sort of gotten me on the map. There were some calls coming in from managers across the country asking me to train their staff. They didn't like that. And I had a very pivotal conversation with my manager at the time and was pitching like, we could do this and dreams and what about this? And we can do so much better. We could be on the map and like change the world. I'm exaggerating, but not really. I was very naive, especially looking back. I'm like, what was I thinking? Did I not know where I was? I did not. I was just like, the starry-eyed young kid that like just wanted to help. I still feel that way, but in a different way. And so I looked at her, gave her those thoughts, and she laughed at me. And I said, so basically what I'm hearing you say is you want me to come to work and go to some meetings. And she laughed and said, well, that and like answer some emails.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, because at that point I was up in management. So I had worked my way into an assistant nurse manager role, was running the childbirth education program at that hospital. And I walked out of that, called my friend and was like, my soul will die here. And I remember saying that. I know exactly where I was. And I was like, uh-oh, you're not going to be able to stand being in this place for very long. And it was about 6 weeks later that I officially quit my job And I just said, if they don't want me, then I'm just going to try it on my own. And that was also very dumb and naive of me.
What does that
'Cause
look like?
well, that started with I knew. So honestly, how it really started was I Googled, like, I was like, okay, so I'm pregnant. I have a question. I would Google it, right? This is 7.5, almost 8 years ago. And you Google it, and the first bar that came up on the screen for Google was a bunch of YouTube videos. And so I was like, okay, what's out there? And I remember this video still is out there. It had millions of views. And it was this woman with sort of a bowl cut that was at the front of a classroom with an easel and talked like this about pregnancy and your uterus. And I was like,
Oh
oh,
my goodness.
I got this one down. And at that point, there really wasn't birth influencers. There really wasn't people on Instagram. There definitely wasn't really anyone on YouTube. And I was like, I have a few things. I knew I was going to take clients as a doula. So I knew I was going that direction as well and was going to do private childbirth ed. But I was like, if I put a few of those videos on YouTube, one, I could send them to my clients so I don't have to answer the same question
Again
7,000 times.
and again.
Yes. When do I know that I'm in labor? What is a cervix? What do they do for a vaginal? All those things. So I was just like, I'm going to do these videos, put them out there so I can use them for my clients. And if people watch them, great. And slowly but surely, my YouTube channel grew and it continued to grow. And for about 4.5 years, I put out a video a week on YouTube while
Wow.
building
And
up a client base.
yeah, and they're well done.
Well, and they've gotten even better well done. So I took a break because YouTube, if you're thinking about doing any kind of social, I will say YouTube is the most strenuous. It is the most expensive. It requires the most. And I do all of them now. So I would say that like I just sort of, my business took off. And so I took a break for about almost 3 years. And just this last April, we are back. And I am back to posting a video a week. And what's fun about it now is that all of our production has increased like exponentially. And so it's so fun to get to go a little shorter, give a fresh take, and be back on YouTube and continuing to nurture
Welcome
that
back.
audience. Thank you. It's so fun. So I did that. I started taking doula clients. I did some private classes. I taught childbirth class in the community. And then sort of got to a place where I was maxed out, and then COVID happened somewhere in there. And
I
so,
heard about
but mind
that.
you, I know that also took place. I'm sure it's like, it's a distant memory now, but I remember that FaceTime call from you actually when you were in the hospital. It was so sweet. So it was actually prior to COVID where I was all of a sudden, it took my nursing brain where like, when you're a nurse and you're at the bedside, I really only saw how I practiced as a nurse. And I knew how I was and I had ownership over that, but you don't really get to see what other nurses do all the time. But now as a doula, I did. And I started to get to go to all the hospitals all over LA and was observing the nursing culture, nursing environment, nursing care all over the city. At the same time, I was developing my own practice as a nurse, which I can offer my patients my nursing education, my nursing brain, all of that, and also couldn't up the pit, increase the Pitocin on the pump. I couldn't call the doctor. I couldn't advocate in the same way. I couldn't use the medical stuff to help my patient along, which
would
that was how
say-
I was trained.
It sounds like a neutered nurse.
A neutered nurse.
Is that
It
the
was.
new
My hands
TikTok
were tied
channel?
with my normal like anatomy that I was used to. My hands
That
were
must
very
be
tied.
so hard because even as a doula, you kind of want to jump in and do stuff.
Yes. Oh
And
my
you
gosh.
can't,
Tell
but
me
like
about it.
that was your environment. That's what you were running and doing and then managing.
Yes.
And now you're just kind of there, like hands tied behind
Observing.
your back.
Yeah. Well, and like imagine there being emergencies and you watching people's response and being like, get over there. What are you doing? Or like
I
resuscitating
cannot
a baby.
imagine
Like
that.
I was just like, "Ugh!" It
I
was
never
very,
even
it,
thought
that
about
still.
that. I
very
always would
hard.
tell people, you want Sarah Lavonne, she's going to be the best doula ever because like doulas don't have medical training, medical experience, where
Yeah.
other kinds of support. You had everything.
Mhm.
And then I never thought about the fact that you're in there and just have to like zip it and tie your
Yeah.
hands.
Well,
Wow.
it's like an art. I will say that like it's a practice I feel like I've developed too. And I will say that now having rapport with the nurses, because now I show up to a hospital and they know me and they're like, you do whatever, you tell us what to do. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That is not what I'm here to do. I'm here to support you, but they're a little bit more easier to work with. But I will say, secret sauce is that I had never obviously been on the doula side, but I'd been working with doulas in the community and like hearing complaints and hearing the challenges. And I never got it until I was on that side. And I was like, whoa, this is very different. And I have all this expertise. I am like, board certified in obstetrics. Like I know my ish. And I wasn't always like that at the
Okay.
bedside or seen that way.
Let me recap before we take our next break.
Great.
5 years old, you watch your mom give birth, and it's like, wow, that was cool. Then 10 years old, you're like, I want to be a nurse, whatever that means. Then you become a nurse, get a job right out of it, and pediatric experience, and then working at an LA hospital, trauma hospital, where you see a lot. It must have been taking on experience like drinking from a fire hose. And
Yes.
then the Beverly Hills version of labor and delivery, quite different. Then
Mm-hmm.
getting involved in education, then management, and then realizing your hands are very tied at the hospital. So you leave that
Mm.
system to have a better impact on a problem, which is people are having crappy childbirth experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not able to solve the problem the way you want to from within. So you go outside the system and you're supporting people one at a time, but making videos for the rest of us. And then you're doing childbirth education, which is a great effort at solving the problem. Like the more information people have, the more empowered they are. That's what we're all
Good
about.
information they
Good
have.
information. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Good catch there. Important clarification. And that's what you and we have in common so much is an informed
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy, basically, empowered
Yeah.
pregnancy. But then as the doula, you have this other problem, which is you're in the hospital setting now and you can't do anything, but you're a nuclear submarine. So you don't stop there. And that's going to bring us to what you're doing now when we get back. We'll be right back. Well, this is the moment you've been waiting for. We're back with Sarah Lavonne. And how do you solve the key issue, which is people are still having crappy traumatic birth experiences
Mm-hmm.
in the hospital setting? And what do you do? How do you make a difference? I know that you go home at night and scratch your head wondering
Oh, yeah.
what you could be doing different to influence the system. So what'd you come up with?
Well, I also realized that like I can train people through YouTube or my online classes, and I'm not there, and like they're at the will of the nurse. And so knowing that I had the background that I did, that I've always really believed in nurses, I am a nurse at my core. I will always be a nurse at my core. I thought to myself, the way I'm going to make a difference and an exponential difference is through nursing education. And really, what the phrase that we use is changing the game in obstetrics and flipping the switch on the various statistics that I've been hearing be the same for like the last 5-10 years. And so I really thought to myself, like, if we're going to make a difference, these nurses, they are the ones that are preventing issues. They're recognizing, they're assessing, they're having those one-on-one interactions. They're showing up, providing support or not. And I could train them till I'm blue in the face, and you show up to the hospital and your nurse either gets right on board and empowers you and amplifies your experience and supports you all the way, or disempowers you in potentially even just like one sentence. And again, I was seeing all the variations of the way that nursing care was being provided, not only all over LA, but at that point I had also begun to build a social media presence in the nursing side as well, and began to nurture that community and just was seeing what was going on more. And so I said, if I can't make a difference from the outside in, let's go back to inside out, but from the outside, which is the innovation side of things.
Oddly, that makes a
Sneaky.
lot of sense, what you just said.
I hope so. And so I had been brewing a training in my brain at every single birth, testing it out. I was in like massive study mode and had been sort of obsessing about the concepts surrounding physiologic birth. I read PT, books I read, chiropractic books I read, like all sorts of specialties. I was like kind of really pushing into the more holistic side of medicine, which I always was inclined to. I was always given the patients without an epidural, like that was always very comfortable for me. But I also knew that like the more holistic side and particularly the physiology of birth was not included in any of my nursing education, not in nursing school or on the floor. We are not being trained in the core of what birth is. And so I had been putting together this class in my head that I was calling physiologic birth, that I was like, if everybody knew this stuff, one, we'd decrease medical interventions, but we'd decrease C-section rates, we'd increase patient satisfaction, and they'd have better birth experiences. But again, there's like this enormous gap in our nursing education related to the concepts around physiologic birth. And so I put together a class alongside Justine, who was my partner at the time, partner meaning professional partner at the time. And she eventually got pregnant and needed to take a leave. So I ended up doing it by myself, but I needed her to like expedite the process and like help me do it and commit to it. And so in January of 2020, we launched our first nursing training. I rented a space in Los Angeles that had room for 46 people. We sold it out. I like basically asked for favors from all of my nursing friends and like invite everybody. And it sold it out, added a second day, sold it out, and the buzz was there. And I was like, we're going to take this ish on the road. We're going to change the whole world of OB. Families are going to have way better births. Their nurses are going to be trained in physiologic birth. We're going to start with like activating the body and helping set the body up to work on its own before we go to medical interventions. And that was in January of 2020. And as we all know, the whole world shut down in that March. And so that training went really good. And I kind of sat on it for a year as I pivoted to virtual support and did a lot of online stuff. That was when my YouTube channel really blew up, as you can imagine.
Right.
But I was sitting on this and just was like, oh my gosh, I have to get this out. And it was Justine who actually just kept pushing me like, we can put it online. We can put it online. And I was like, it's like a positioning class and it's like hands-on and you got to practice. And sure enough, by that time, I'd done enough YouTube videos that me being on camera was very comfortable. And we had multiple cameras to do multiple camera angles. And my assistant at the time had a broadcast degree. Long story short, we put it online. And to date, I have trained over 6,000 labor and delivery nurses through the
Wow.
class.
Sarah, congratulations. It's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
When I was building my practice, I would be tempted to go to these marketing events, these pregnancy expos where all these pregnant people are running around and be able to expose them and say, oh, I know you're achy and you're stiff or you're breech or whatever. Look at what we can do. We can help you feel better. We can help you function better. And you would bring in like 3 or 4 people from the event that were, all day on your feet and have
Yeah.
4 great new clients from the event, which is okay. That's worthwhile.
Yeah.
When you go to an event of childbirth professionals, same amount of time on your feet, and then make really deep relationships with 3 or 4 childbirth professionals, they are going to be sending clients to you
Yeah.
until the end of time. And so the difference between being able to help an individual, which is very powerful, but to be able to help an individual who is then going to go help many, many, many individuals is so exponential. And 6,000 nurses just means
Millions.
nobody knows how many people's lives you're affecting, impacting, how many births you're improving. And then you double it or more because it's not just that mom that's giving birth, it's the child that was birthed and their
Amen.
birth experience. And there's that nuclear energy. There's that person that never
It's
stops
crazy.
thinking about the problem and about solutions and putting in the hard work to make it happen and then
Yeah.
seeing success. So, all right, at the end of the day, first of all, just major kudos to you. You're just
Thank you.
inspiration. You always have been, but even more so now.
Hmm.
So, as an individual, as a person who might be pregnant or thinking about a pregnancy, what do you have for us, for them? And then as a nurse or a childbirth professional, what do you have for them and where do we find it all?
Yeah. So for pregnant people, if you want more from me, I encourage you to take the BundleBirth class, which is a childbirth class combined with everything that I teach our nurses. And so it really is this like easy touch point where then if your nurse has taken our class and now you've taken the BundleBirth class, you're off to the races. You're speaking the same language, you're on the same page, and it is so fun to hear those stories of like, I took your class, I was really hoping for a BundleBirth nurse, and sure enough, they came in with their team underwear pin or their starfish pin, or they had your position guide at the bedside because now it's turned into products and mentorships and all sorts of things. We have a learning retreat in Mexico for nurses that like it's just exploded. And so then you're off to the races, you're speaking the same language. And so we have that coping with labor class, et cetera. Mind you, what I will say to those pregnant people is that I think, and I was thinking about this moment with you, Dr. Berlin, and I just was like, I think so much of the information out there about hospital birth is really scary. People love to tell their horror stories, which your story is so valid. And there is a lot that the hospital still has to improve. If anybody knows, I know, trust me. And I'm hearing those stories every day. And there's so much good also happening in the hospital. And there are so many incredible human beings. And I say nurses because that's really my community, but also doctors, midwives, other birth professionals, doulas out there that genuinely care to be the best they can be for you. These nurses are investing their own personal money to be better for you. And I think for me as a pregnant person, I'm not pregnant, but if I was a pregnant person, I think to know that it's not all bad, that there are, especially ask for your BundleBirth nurses, and they might be like, what's that? And then be like, oh, well, you should know BundleBirth, because what's happening is that units are not only decreasing their C-section rate by like 10, 15%, okay, which is astronomical if you read any of those studies. Like a 1% decrease is considered significant. But these families are walking out feeling whole, feeling like they were heard, that they were seen, safe, and soothed as we teach, that like they had nurses who came alongside them and maybe it didn't go as planned, but also they had that support, that they were never alone. They felt autonomy over their body, their experience. That's been one of our big pushes. And in fact, if you are being asked, can I touch you here? Can I do this? Are you ready now? You tell me when. That movement is a BundleBirth nurses movement. And these nurses have latched on because they've just needed the tools to be better. And that's exactly what I get to do now on that exponential level, which just feels like, what am I doing with my life? This is like, again, I was fully happy just being a bedside nurse and helping every patient. And I still miss that, to be honest, because I'm not there at the bedside right now. But
you're
it's
at
like
a million bedsides.
Yeah. Which is why I still take private clients occasionally, because I'm just like desperate to be at births. People are like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, there's no place I'd rather be than at a birth until I've been up for 3 days. And then I might want to be in my bed for like a second, but I digress. So if you want to find us, bundlebirth.com, BundleBirth on Instagram, BundleBirth on TikTok, Sarah Lavonne on YouTube. But if you put in the search BundleBirth, you'll find me. There's so many free and paid resources out there for you. We just want to support you.
And a smattering of gifts on Informed Pregnancy Plus.
Oh, yeah.
That you shared with us. So
that's right.
If you want a little taste, you can always check it out if you subscribe to Informed Pregnancy Plus. Yeah. Sarah, you're amazing.
So are you.
And,
I really am honored to be in this work with you, to be honest. I actually talk about you in Physiologic Birth, by the way, not by name. I keep it anonymous unless you don't want to be anonymous. But I talk about the work that you've done and how you had to sensitize your fingertips to be able to feel and all of that. So you've influenced my practice, and I appreciate that I can come to you with questions and that we're in this work doing like very different work, but also very similar work.
It's mutual. There's, a bunch of puzzle pieces that together make the full picture.
Yeah.
And I'm super honored to be in that puzzle with you. Thank you for sharing everything that you're doing now, and thank you for doing it. Yeah, and at home, if you're listening, I would definitely recommend going to check out BundleBirth and Sarah Lavonne. You're going to be glad you did. All right. Thanks for listening to the Informed Pregnancy Podcast. For more pregnancy and parenting information just like this, visit us online at informedpregnancy.com.
Doctor,